welcome in everybody to the first episode. I'm so excited about this. The first episode of the Alternative Edge with Tony Jigsaw Cotillo. Follow me at tcotillo23 for the Sharp app. Finally, right? This has been in the works for a couple months. Things were percolating here and there, and now we're finally live. Okay, we are finally live, offering a one-stop shop for all your sports betting needs. All right, so I really wanted to get into this. I'm stepping outside of the realm of my analytics of what I do. If you haven't noticed, if you haven't seen me before, I've been a big supporter and a big contributor to Win Daily Sports. Do the Fantasy Firebox every weekend, Saturdays, Sundays. We do, me and John Jansen for Win Daily Sports do things for DFS. But now this is a different realm. Okay, I wanted to take the DFS knowledge that I have and the way I formulate my DFS lineups, and I wanted to enter into the prop market. And I wanted to show everybody how they correlate between the two. Okay, there's a huge correlation between the prop betting market and the DFS market. So from week to week, what we're going to do is we're going to look at how the DFS values go up and down and how they attribute to the prop market going up and down. And then we're going to make some highly educated picks for that specific week of who we think is going to be over or under based on what the numbers say. So because week one has not started yet, we're doing this show, the inaugural episode of the Alternative Edge, is we are going to look at specific season-long prop bets and give some fantasy insight into these bets and figure out which way we're leaning. Are we going all in? Are we fading? You know, what is it? Is it a teaser? I'm not sure. But the numbers that have been put out, some of them to me are too good to be true. So again, give us a follow at the Sharp app on all social formats. You see it on the bottom of the screen. Make sure that you're subscribing to this YouTube channel. Okay. And most importantly, make sure you're downloading the app. Go to your app store, Google Play, Apple, doesn't matter. You see it better. Picks, bigger wins, Sharp. Download the app today. I'll tell you what, there's so much stuff on the Sharp app. You're absolutely going to love it. From articles, from analytics, from short vids. Okay, everything is on there. It's a one-stop shop. So go check it out. Now, let's go right in to the realm of possibility here. And when we talk about the prop market for season-long NFL football. So I came up with a formulation of about 10 specific plays that I'm looking at going into this year. And I've done so much homework in the fantasy market that I figured, you know what, let's dip into this prop market and see if we can kind of correlate the two. And I think that's what we're going to be able to do. Don't forget to put your comments in here on the YouTube page. We will go back and forth all day long. Download the app, go in Discord. There are so many fantastic people, okay, that are involved in this Sharp app. And you're going to get a ton of knowledge, whether it be NHL, Major League Baseball, NBA, college football, NFL. It doesn't matter. There are so many things that we cover right here, and we're just getting started. Okay, so let's get right into this. Okay, let's get right into it. Okay, and we're going to talk. Let's go quarterbacks. Okay, and number one, we're going to put, in my opinion, my MVP for this year is Josh Allen. I've been saying this before. I'll say it again. Josh Allen really took a traumatic step, huge step last year. Okay, and he wants it. He's worked on his mechanics. He's watched the film. He's a student of the game. He's becoming that player. You know, we talked about years about Patrick Mahomes taking the torch from Tom Brady, right? We talked about that. The up and coming young quarterback who's going to take over the league, who's going to be the face of the NFL, which is obviously Patrick Mahomes, but right behind him, in my opinion, is Josh Allen. And I couldn't be happier for Sean McDermott. As you can see, I'm a Philly guy. You see in the background, except for, they're my top guard. I should say right over there, my top guards in the game for basketball. There's nobody better than Jordan, Kobe, and AI. But when we talk about football, I bleed green. I'm an Eagle guy, right? I hate Dallas. It is what it is. But We're talking about Sean McDermott, who came up to the Andy Reid, who finally got his shot. And I was dead wrong on Sean McDermott. I did not think he would be able to be a legitimate NFL coach. I thought he was a great coordinator, but never be that guy. But he's proved me wrong. He has inserted a culture into Buffalo that is all about winning and all about professionalism. And, that is huge. It's huge in today's NFL, especially when you have a very young team across the board, right? So they bring in a guy like Emmanuel Sanders this year, who's a veteran receiver, can still run crisp routes. He's a great blocker. I think they're going to reestablish the running game behind Zach Moss this year. So it brings us to the Josh Allen number, which is 480.5 for his rushing yards. Now, a lot of people, right away, you look at that number, you say, give me the over all day. Josh Allen, look at the stats. But this is why I like this show, because what we're going to do is I'm going to show you what I've looked at from a fantasy perspective and then help you make your educated guess on the prop market. Okay, and when we look at this, you look at Josh Allen, his 3 years in the league, he has dropped off at least 100 yards per year on the ground, plus 100 each year. Okay, 631 in 2018, 510 in 2019, 421 in 2020. Why do you ask? It's because his attempts have gone up every single year. 320, 461, and 572, which means he's becoming a more mature quarterback. We all seen this. We've seen this with Kyler Murray. We've seen it with Russell Wilson. Okay, we've seen it with Patrick Mahomes when, even Lamar Jackson, who I don't ever think will get to this status of attempts, but their ability to be mobile and to get away from pressure right in the beginning before they're learning the entire playbook is why they have so many rushing yards. You've seen Josh Allen is not that guy anymore. He's a red zone beast, but that doesn't mean he's running for 70, 80 yards per game. He can do it if he has to, but he's not going to rely on it. And you see that. So for me, for this number, if you look at what he's done historically, this number is way too high for me. So I'm going under all day. I do not see Josh Allen hitting 480 plus, 480 and a half, 500. I don't see that happening. I think if history, suggests anything, it shows us that he's going to continue to drop. And I think he's going to be in that 375 to 400 range for his entire career. I think that's where he's going to be. He's going to offer you probably like 6 touchdowns on the ground because he is big body and he loves the red zone. But for me, that's how I've come up with the under right now, season long, Josh Allen, 480 and a half. Now let's go to another young guy in Josh Herbert, okay, who had an unbelievable season last year, right? Nobody could have predicted it. Nobody, because when we heard about Justin Herbert, all we heard about was this kid is so inaccurate. He can't throw the football with accuracy. He doesn't have, listen, we heard it all. And then he gets pressed into duty right against the Kansas City Chiefs. Who would have thought? Because that odd situation with Tyrod Taylor. And what does he do? He basically sets the world on fire in the NFL. Throws for almost 4,500 yards, 31 touchdowns, and a 67% completion percentage on 595 attempts. This is huge. It showed because, number one, the guy who we all couldn't stand in San Diego, I call him San Diego because they're still going to be San Diego, even though they're Los Angeles, okay, is Anthony Lynn, who is now in the Motor City in Detroit as an offensive coordinator. He was terrible as a play caller. And one of the reasons why there were so many limitations on this Chargers offense. And now you have Josh Herbert, who's got an entire offseason, okay, that was completely different from a COVID offseason, even though the pandemic is still going on, but things are opening up and becoming easier to learn by in the offseason for these NFL quarterbacks. So what's going to happen now is now he's going to understand more film. He's going to do a lot more scientific analytics when it comes to coverage options, when it comes to schemes, and how these defensive coordinators are going to attack him. And I think this is huge for Josh Allen because last year he was just under 600 attempts, 595. He is 100% going to get 600 attempts this year. And if he threw 31 touchdowns as a rookie, okay, and essentially was a top 5 fantasy quarterback, and he was a 100% DFS darling week in and week out, there's no way in my mind that he doesn't hit 28 and a half, 29. Okay, so obviously we're going to say 29, right? So for me, it's 30 or bust for Josh Herbert. So or Justin Herbert. I can't believe I'm calling this guy Josh Herbert, right? But this is what happens when you get into these things. Actually, here's the best part about the technology, right? So as we're talking, right? As we're talking, we're just going to change this right here, right? We're going to change this right here, and we're going to put this back up. There you go, Justin Herbert, right? Sorry, Justin, don't call me Josh. When you have so many J's and you got all these analytics in your mind, sometimes the words get messed up. Not a big deal. We're never perfect. So Justin Herbert to me, 28 and a half, 100% all day long. Like I said, I think he's 30 or bust. So let's dip in to the wide receiver market. Now, from a fantasy perspective, one of the most intriguing teams for me in the offseason was the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, the reason being is because they have three really good receivers, two who we've seen play, one who we haven't yet, right? Obviously, we're talking about T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and Jamar Chase. Joe Burrow coming off a horrible injury, right? You never know how adversity is going to affect the mental status of a quarterback. Look at what happened to Carson Palmer years ago when he tore his ACL for the first time. So you have to remember there's a mental aspect behind this that, until you get into game day situations, how you're going to react when you have that 285-pound defensive end running at you at full speed. Are you going to panic? How are you going to feel when you take that first hit? This is something nobody can explain. But one thing I can say is if he is right, he's going to throw for a lot of yards, which inherently is going to help these receivers flourish when it comes to fantasy football. But one of the problems is you have to hold on to the ball. You could be thrown at you all day long, but if you're not holding on to the ball, guess what? It's not going to matter. It's not going to matter. Okay. And that's one of the biggest issues we're seeing right now with Jamar Chase. Now, this to me is the perfect marriage. We talked about this before when you talk about Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, right? We talk about the LSU connection. Obviously, we know that they love playing together. 10-25 is a big number for Jamar Chase. Now, I've been on record saying, if you followed me, again, give me a follow at TKTOL23, and you watch the Fantasy Firebox on the weekends, and you follow any of my work, whether it be at Heat Ratio Sports, whether it be at Fox Sports The Gambler, and right here at Win Daily Sports, and right here on the Sharp app, I can tell you right now that I was a huge proponent of Jamar Chase because he's a yak guy, he's a yards after the catch guy. And I think he has that ability to be Joe Burrow's outlet 90% of the time. But he hasn't been able to hold on to the ball. And we know this even from a running back standpoint. When you come into the preseason, when you come into the regular season as a rookie, you don't get on the field if you can't pass protect, you can't hold on to the ball. If you're fumbling like the Tiki Barber of old and you're consistently giving up blown coverages and getting your quarterback killed, you will not get on the field. Well, guess what? If you can't hold on to the ball as a receiver, you're not going to be on the field. So this is something I think has a little mental mental moxie into it. And it's something that he's going to have to work on. But are you willing as a fantasy owner to buy into that? I don't know, but luckily this is the alternative edge, and we're talking about prop bets right now, and we're talking about that fantasy analytic, how that's going to transfer into this prop number of 1,025 yards. To me, this is an under all day long. I could definitely see Jamar Chase hitting 900, maybe 920, 930, but I just don't. Number one, there's too many mouths to feed in that offense. Okay, too many. Boyd, Higgins, Chase, there's just too many. Right, and you're going to get Mixon out in the wheel route, probably get thrown to Mixon a lot more because of the injury and because of the mental psyche. So I don't see Jamar Chase hitting 1,000. I don't. So for me, this is the easy one. This is an under all day. And again, these are the prop bets for season long right here. Okay, so let's flip the script and go with a double prop here, which I really like this. Okay, we're going to talk about the New Orleans guy who everybody doesn't know what to do with. And I say that because Alvin Kamara, even though he's explosive, even though he's been electric, what's going on in New Orleans is something we've never witnessed. There's no more Drew Brees. I mean, how often have we been able to say over the last 10 to 15 years that there's no more Drew Brees? Right? So what is this team going to do? And everybody's the Taysom Hill, Jameis Winston, who is a gunslinger, by the way, and could be a very sneaky fantasy sleeper in the late rounds. But we have to think outside the box here. And that's why we call this the alternative edge, because we have to think about, let's break this team down and understand how they're going to formulate. Now, what I will tell you is we just did an NFL preview, me and John Jansen the other day, and John had a great point and talked about, when we talked about sleepers, he talked about Latavius Murray, and that made me think. And kudos to him for bringing up Latavius Murray, because of no number one wide receiver on this team, and that directly affects Alvin Kamara. So when I look at that, I say to myself, let's look at what Kamara has been able to do. And I don't go by last year. That's one thing I don't do. I do a 3-year average. I love the 3-year average if it's possible. Obviously, if it's a second-year guy, you only have 1 year, so that's all you got to go by. But Alvin Kamara, if you look at it, his last 4 years, his first 4 years in the league. I should say last 4 years, first 4 years in the league. All right. The most he's gotten is 194 attempts. So that was in 2018. And we all know that year was fantastic, right? 194 attempts, 105 targets. I get it, right? So he had almost 900 yards rushing. But then he drops off to 797. And then last year he goes up to 932. But I think last year, a lot of that had to do with, Drew Brees' limitations and how that offense was formulated. And I think they were kind of lost. They weren't expecting Michael Thomas not to be there. We're going to get to that in a minute. Okay, so it was a different style of offense. Now, what I could see this year, and this is why this is a double-edged prop here, okay, an alternative prop, which I love to say now. But when we look at this, I think this is going to be less running for Alvin Kamara and more passing for Alvin Kamara, right? I think this is very easy to see. I think this is a Latavius Murray kind of role as the 1B to 1A. And I think because of the Michael Thomas injury, and nobody really, listen, we could get happy about Marquez Callaway all day long, right? We could get happy about Traquan Smith. Traquan Smith didn't have a game over 3 catches all year. So all of a sudden he's going to be a 10-target receiver? I don't think so. Right? Marquez Callaway, I don't think so. Your number one receiver on this team is going to be Alvin Kamara. So if that's the case, you're looking at 90 to 100 catches for Alvin Kamara and less behind the box, which to me makes this a big under at 945.5. I could see Alvin Kamara back in that 900, 885, maybe even 790 range. Anywhere between 775 and 900, I think, is a sweet spot for rushing yards for Alvin Kamara this year. But then that brings us to the receptions, the double-edged prop. Again, you only get this stuff right here. If you're not following the Sharp app right now, you got to get to there at this moment. Go follow it. Go to your app store, download the Sharp app, and you can watch this video live right on your phone, which is amazing. It's embedded right into that Sharp app, okay? So the Kamara receptions, I think, absolutely have to go over here. Because if you just look at past history, again, what it suggests is you have a guy who's averaging 81 per year. So I'm not sure how Vegas and all the other skeptics out here can take this number of 70.5. They always say the line's telling you something, the number's telling you something. But I think they got this one wrong. I do, because I don't think they're looking internally into how this offense is going to click. I think they feel Kamara is going to be more behind the box and more of a runner this year instead of a pass catcher. And I'm going to tell you something right off the bat. If that's the case, they're wrong. Alvin Kamara is going to be one of the biggest threats, if not the biggest threats, out of the backfield in the entire NFL this year. I 100% believe he's going to get 100 catches. And if he doesn't, it's going to be very, very close, 95, 96. That's what I'm predicting. So that's the case based on those analytics all day long. I'm going over on a 70.5. I think it's a no-brainer, and it's going to continue to be a no-brainer. Now, let's stick on the receptions. And let's go out to Denver. One of my favorite guys. I love me some Courtland Sutton. Okay, now everybody's on the Jerry Jeudy wagon. Everybody. And I understand, you have the quarterback controversy out there. I know. Listen, they say I get it. It doesn't matter who they say the starter is right now. It's just going to be a week-to-week thing. And again, whether it's Locke, whether it be Bridgewater, it doesn't matter. It's all going to depend on who outplays one another. It's just the way the NFL works, especially in a Vic Fangio kind of offense that's going to be predicated on the run. He's going to listen. They love Javonte Williams out there. I don't think Melvin Gordon stands a chance of being that number one running back. But we're talking about receivers right now, and we're talking about a guy who's been overlooked already. Okay, and I've done this work for my DFS analytics for my season long drafts, and I've looked at a guy, Courtland Sutton, that everybody's forgotten. Why? Because he only played one game last year and tore his ACL, so everybody forgets. Now, I don't take a lot of stock in the preseason. And I will tell you that right now. But what I do watch in preseason is how guys are moving. I don't care what they catch, what they drop, what they run. I don't care. I want to see their mobility. I want to see how they're working. And for a guy that's coming off an ACL injury, I want to see how healthy this guy really looks. And he looks 100% back. And he's a tall, big body receiver who is a huge red zone threat, who knows how to catch the ball. He's going to be a huge outlet. Jerry Jeudy will be that guy running all over the field, but Courtland Sutton is going to be the guy. You know what you can attribute this to, honestly? Look at Tampa Bay. You know, Jerry Jeudy is basically your Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans is your Courtland Sutton. And who got all the touchdowns? Who got the red zone looks? It was undoubtedly Mike Evans. This is the role that Courtland Sutton is going to have, in my opinion. Did everybody forget 125 targets in year 2? 1,100 yards, 72 catches, and 6 touchdowns? Did everybody forget that stat? I think they did. And because they forgot that, that's good for us from a fantasy perspective and in the prop market, because I think they're forgetting about it as well. So his over 5.5, which is easily 6 touchdowns, as he's already hit, okay, in his career, this is easily an 8 to 10 touchdown year for Courtland Sutton in this Denver offense. That I'll tell you what, with Noah Fant, with Jerry Jeudy, with Courtland Sutton, with KJ Hamler, this is going to be a fun team to watch. Fun. Okay, so 100%, I'm going all in on the over for Courtland Sutton. Now, let's keep it moving, and let's go to another interesting situation. So the other interesting situation is what we had going on in Tennessee. So they bring in Julio Jones this year, right? We all know about that. So Julio they bring in, and everybody starts freaking out about, how's this offense going to look? There's too many mouths to feed out there. Listen, everybody just calm down, okay? Julio Jones is not the Julio Jones of Atlanta. He still is undoubtedly a stud. But if you think you're going to get 170 to 200 targets out of Julio Jones anymore at age 32 with a very long history of injuries, sadly mistaken, it's not going to happen. Last year in only 9 games, he did get 70 targets, but in an offense, again, that's going to throw the ball 626 times. Huge. You're not going to get that from the Tennessee offense because they have a guy in the background of Derrick Henry, who's an absolute bull. Julio Jones has been known in his career as frustrating the hell out of fantasy owners for being a decoy. I honestly, you go back to the Roddy White days, and Roddy White was having these exceptional years in the red zone, and you're talking about Julio Jones barely getting a look. 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns for an entire year, okay, because he was a decoy in many plays. People don't want to hear that, okay, but it's kind of the role he's going to have in Tennessee. He's going to get his catches. Listen, to say Julio is not going to get 60 to 70 catches is being lazy. Is not understanding the game. He's 100%, if he's healthy, that's who he's going to get. Just look at what Corey Davis was able to do when healthy in this offense, who is now a New York Jet. So now you insert Julio Jones, and all that to me is going to do is elevate the game of A.J. Brown. As much as being my 5th-ranked fantasy wide receiver, to be honest with you, he had 106 targets last year and 2 short games missed. So if you mean to tell me that A.J. Brown was able to hit 70 last year with 11 touchdowns at 1,100 yards, he's not going to be able to get plus 12 from bringing in an established stud Julio Jones to command attention on the outside? Absolutely. This is a 90-catch campaign for A.J. Brown this year. Okay? And if you just look at the 2 games he missed, Okay, just look at the 2 games he missed, and this is what you have to look at. Deep inside, the alternative side. I'm going to say it again. The alternative side of the prop market. Look at these numbers from a fantasy perspective and say, if he gave me 70 catches with 2 short games last year, meaning he only played 14, not 16, and you just give him an average of 7, okay, and you go plus 14 for playing an entire 16 games, he's at 84. That's last year. And this number is at 81 and a half. So for me, it's the overall day. I absolutely see a 90-plus catch campaign from A.J. Brown in an offense where Ryan Tannehill, COVID and all, coming back, still feel like he can really push for an MVP style year. I think that he's going to be that good. And let's break right into that, into the Ryan Tannehill pass touchdowns. Okay, another one of my favorite plays this year. Okay, and I get it. Listen, I get it. Everybody's talking about Tannehill and, he with COVID. And listen, you still have to understand that Ryan Tannehill last year, and again, the important part of looking at Tannehill is last year, because you have to look at when he was pressed into action. Okay, now he played 16 games last year. And he played very, very well, okay? Nobody expected Ryan Tannehill to be the guy that he absolutely was. And again, he was exceptional. Now, a lot of people didn't realize, was he going to be a primetime performer or was he going to be a game manager because of Derrick Henry and because of Mike Vrabel, who's had that New England mentality. He's a hard-nosed guy. He likes the running game, right? Obviously, who doesn't like the running game when you have Derrick Henry in the background? But a lot of people forget that Ryan Tannehill, before he tore his ACL in Miami, was really on the up and up. After his first year, okay, he had 3 years at his lowest attempts, 587, but he was at a 66% completion percentage. Okay, in 2014, threw for close to 4,100 yards and 27 touchdowns. He followed up the next year with 4,200 yards and 24 touchdowns. This guy knows how to play the game. And now he's in an offense that has a ton of weaponry. And he's in an offense that is going to allow him to showcase his veteran abilities. And for me, for my money, a guy who threw 33 touchdowns last year on an offense that takes away Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith and inserts Julio Jones, and another year of A.J. Brown, another year of Derrick Henry. How can Ryan Tannehill not hit 30 touchdowns this year? So for me, this 28.5 number is an overall day that's specifically based on my fantasy analytics. Okay, this is what I come up with. This is the way you're getting exactly the way I formulate a lot of my stuff. Okay, I'm giving that to you so you can understand what I'm looking at. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. Even if these picks are wrong, what you're going to understand from me, from myself, from Tony Jigsaw Cotillo, give me a follow at TCotillo23, is that I will give you at least what I'm thinking. You can see that I didn't just throw some stuff at the wall. These are the analytics behind what my picks are. They may not come out. Nobody's perfect. Everybody hits a dry spell, but it's going to be interesting to go back and watch this episode at the end of the year and track it along the year and see how we're looking when it comes to these props. And now you know where my mind is going. So we do this every week, the week-to-week, the week-to-week market going up and down, the values, the fades. You're going to understand why I'm doing what I do, which, listen, it's fun, man. I love every minute of it. So let's finish this up. We have a couple more plays. We're on our first ever episode. I'm still excited, right? So excited. I mean, listen, there you go again. Sharp, download the Sharp app. Right on the side, better picks, better wins. This is better picks, bigger wins, I should say. And one of the biggest things I want to tell you about too is that Sharp Academy, learn to bet like a pro. And the reason why I did this show is because I am a novice when it comes to sports betting per se. I've always bet on sports, but not at the level of some of the guys that you'll find on this app. So I wanted to find my niche, and I wanted to say in my opinion, I'm an expert fantasy player. So I want to take that and start working on the prop market specifically because they kind of do correlate together, okay, which I talked about in the beginning. But if you're a novice and you want to start talking money lines, you want to start talking fades and chalk and juice, and you want to know all about those numbers, Sharp Academy, learn to bet like a pro. It's right there. You click on that. John Stastational, the guy who is leading this shindig from a betting perspective, he will give you the ins and outs on how you should lay your bets, and also gives you a free bet of the day. So don't forget about that. So let's get back to our last two picks right here. And I told you I'm a Philly guy, so I'm going to leave the Philly one for last, okay? Because I'm a Philly guy, I'll leave the Philly one for last. Let's go right from the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs and look at Travis Kelce. This number stood out to me right off the bat because it's huge, okay? It's huge. Now, I understand that Kansas City has a high-powered offense, and no matter what Tyreek Hill is, Travis Kelce is the number one benefactor of that scheme. 100%. I mean, you look at his numbers, his receptions, last 3 years, like I tell you, go by 103, 97, 105. So he's averaging about 100, which is why this number is 100.5, which is essentially 101, right? That's why the number is where it's at. But eventually, these numbers have to start to come down. They just have to, right? Whether it be a Super Bowl hangover, whether it be because he's age 31. Okay, I don't know what it is, but for me, could be the rise of a guy like McCole Hardman, who's going to command a little more. A guy like Pringle is going to command a little more. That's going to take away for Travis Kelce. Maybe this year Tyreek Hill gives you more than an 80-catch campaign. I'm not sure. But I just don't feel comfortable laying that kind of money on 101 receptions for Travis Kelce. Because if history suggests, if you look at the way this goes, because he had such a huge year, I think that's his ceiling. He's never going to get more than 105 catches. It's not going to happen, right? That ceiling of 105 and 1,400 as a tight end. It's ridiculous the year that he had last year. Okay, 145 targets. These are all ceilings for Travis Kelce, which means must go up, but must go down. Okay, so once you go up, eventually you got to go down. And that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. So if Travis Kelce gets you 95 catches this year, is it terrible for Travis Kelce? No. But from a betting perspective, at 100.5, 101, you want to be on that under. You want to cash in. Okay, because to me, this is what speaks out, right? This is where people get a little carried away over those few years. You have to look at it. You have to especially look at the way this offense is going to work this year. I think they're going to run the ball a lot more. And I think Patrick Mahomes showed that he's going to use his legs a little more than not. And this year, they're going to scheme on a guy like Travis Kelce. Not saying that you're going to be able to stop him, but, scheming on Travis Kelce every single game is definitely going to drop off his target numbers and his share of the receptions. So for me, for my money, this is an easy under on Travis Kelce at 100.5. I think this year he still gets 90-plus catches, but I don't think he tops that century mark. So let's end how fitting in Philadelphia with my man, Jalen Hurts. Now, Jalen Hurts, the talk, are they going to anoint him the starter? Is he the starter? They bring in Gardner Minshew. It's not the guy, right? We've heard so many things. All I know is I watched Jalen Hurts last year in a 3-game period, okay, when he came in, become a top 7 fantasy quarterback. 100%. A guy that was elusive, a guy that could use his arm, his legs, his vision. Might not be the most accurate, might not be the most strongest. Doesn't matter. Okay? He knows how to improvise. Last year, he had close to 400 yards rushing in 63 attempts. And again, you're talking about weeks 13 when he came in against Green Bay, and he finished out against Washington in week 17. So you're talking about 5 weeks. 5 weeks, he hit 357. Now, knowing the way this offense is going to work and understanding that there is going to be some growing pains, learning how Sirianni works and how he calls plays, you already know that Jalen Hurts is going to have to improvise. He's going to have to use his legs. I very much believe that Jalen Hurts is going to run more than he's going to pass. I do. Okay, I honestly do, because you're going to see a lot of situations where, because he's a leader and he gets frustrated, where maybe his passes aren't 100% accurate, they're falling off the mark. Maybe the receivers aren't getting the bump off the line. He wants to win. He's a competitor. He has that. He has that. Okay, he has that thoroughbred in him. Okay, because of the adversity that he's faced his entire career, he is one of the most charismatic locker room leaders that you're going to meet, which means he's going to put it all out on the line. For me, for my money, that means he has the will to win more than anybody else on that team. So if the passes will work, the legs are going to work. It's going to be that Russell Wilson, style of game, where Russell Wilson, we already know in the years he's had running the football. So for me, this number is really low. Again, it's low to me. 655 and a half is a low number to me, because I cannot see a guy who in 5 games rushed for 357. If you just double that, he's already over 700, and we're only talking 10 games. So I cannot see a situation unless the only way he doesn't hit this number is if he's not on the field. And we cannot predict injuries. We cannot predict quarterback controversies. What we can say is we have to go all in on this guy playing his entire season, staying healthy, and formulating our opinion based on those numbers. And for me, 655 and a half, easy, all day over. He's at least 700 yards. He's with a top 7 quarterback ranking for me in fantasy, because I think he's going to be that exciting and offer that much play. So there you have it. Jalen Hurts. Let's review like we always do on the show. I love the review. So we have some screenshots. We have some value here. Again, the alternative edge, Tony Jigsaw Cotillo at TCotillo23 at the Sharp app. Give us both a follow. Follow the Sharp app on all social formats. So let's go right from the list. We got Jamar Chase, 1025 under. Okay, we got Josh Allen, 480 and a half rushing yards under. Then we have Justin, don't call me Josh Herbert, passing touchdowns over 28 and a half. Alvin Kamara, the double prop bet here, rush yards, 945 and a half is the under. And again, 70 and a half is the over. And then we go to the pond of the Philadelphia Eagles. In Jalen Hurts, 655 and a half, got to be the over on the rushing yards. Courtland Sutton is the next Mike Evans, 5.5 on the over for touchdowns. A.J. Brown, 81 and a half over, plus 11 from last year with Julio Jones. It's a no-brainer to me. Ryan Tannehill, his counterpart, COVID aside, 20 and a half. There's no reason why he doesn't hit 30, so we're going to over. And as always, the man, the myth, the legend, Travis Kelce, every receptions, 100 and a half, has to be the under. So there you have it, folks. Again, this has been amazing. You will be able to catch this, the Alternative Edge, every single Friday. It's going to premiere on noon. Now, not going to be live, but what I'm going to be, because I really want you guys to get all the analytics, but I'd love to engage with you guys, whether it be Discord, whether it be through YouTube, whether it be through DM at TCotillo23. My DMs are open on Twitter at TCotillo23. Very, very easy. Follow me on Instagram at TCotillo23. Whatever way you want to formulate an engagement, let me know. Discord probably is the best. Discord chats with these guys are unbelievable. You get a lot of great knowledge. And if you want to at me straight, one-on-one, I'm here for that as well. But one thing's for sure, every Friday, I will be here at noon, the premieres of the Alternative Edge episodes, week 1 through 17, 18, 19, playoffs, Super Bowl, doesn't matter, where we take the correlation of DFS, daily fantasy, and we mix it with the prop bet market, and explain to you how the values kind of work together. And what I'm seeing, what you're seeing, and all in all, at the very end, the most important part is that we make some money, right? So again, everybody have a wonderful weekend. The Alternative Edge at Sharp. I'm Tony Jigsaw Cotillo. Make sure you follow that app. Make sure you download it. Get it today. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and I'll see you next. I was going to say next Saturday. I'm going to see you next Friday.